what are you noticing about how people are uh how they're understanding SGA and how he's really rising as one of the top players in the league? And what's your feeling on how confident and how respectful people are? And when I say people, just people around the league, maybe players, or just what's the general energy around SGA and OKC right now?
Well, first of all, he's a 6'6" point guard that can score, can distribute, and I think plays in a smaller market. And I think a lot of times the national audience pays attention to other teams that are more national. And I think Oklahoma is in a situation where they've been playing well. They've just picked up where they left off from last season. I think the biggest difference for Oklahoma this season is they added two pieces at the uh, free agency and the offseason points that added to their team. One in trading to get Alex Caruso, who I believe will be very beneficial to that team going into the playoffs, defending twos, threes, and ones in the playoffs. That's one. And then two, bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein from the New York Knicks. And spent some time with Isaiah towards the beginning of the season. And he really has gelled with this team the right way and really didn't have to add or subtract. He just came in being himself. So I think when you look at the fact that they're winning and the fact that they have the best record at the point of this recording in the NBA's Western Conference, it's hard to ignore that team. I think the same can be said about the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference, where it's not just Donovan Mitchell's team. I think adding a coach in Kenny Atkinson and also that trade with the Atlanta Hawks at the trade deadline continues to do well. I think also the play of Ty Jerome has helped Cleveland exponentially as well.
Yes.
But I also think Evan Mobley has been playing consistently this season as well. So I think it's a coming of age for both teams, not named Lakers, not named Warriors, not named Steph, not named LeBron, not named Anthony Edwards, although Anthony Edwards is still a rising star in this league and will continue to flourish as the time goes on. But I think when you look at the Oklahoma City Thunder and you look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'll tell you that across the league, there are other players and teams that take notice. And the talk in NBA locker rooms is that Shai is the NBA's most valuable player. He's the most valuable player for his team. He's the most valuable player across the league. And it really starts on the inside. I spent some time with the Thunder early in the season, and the vibes in the locker room are what are very, very interesting. You walk to Jalen Williams, I, not E, Jalen Williams, and I asked him just about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's importance to that team. And he says, without a doubt, he's the MVP. He should have been the MVP last season, but he realizes that there's a lot of conversations and politics that go into the league before you are the MVP. And I've even having conversation with the other Jalen Williams, who normally on the road sits next to him in the NBA locker room, in the visitors' locker room, and we were having a conversation about sneakers, and Jalen Williams wears Adidas, and oftentimes he wears the James Harden's Adidas sneakers. And we were comparing the sevens and the nines. And Jalen Williams said to me that those Harden sneakers remind him of Nike foams. And while we were talking, uh, I'll edit the conversation, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander essentially just said, you know, talking about Air Jordans, he's a Converse guy. He has his own signature shoe, and he kind of was giving his take on where the Jordan brand and the wearers of those sneakers, whether that be Luka Doncic and Zion Williamson and others, and where that direction is going and how it's more of an open market. It's not just a foregone conclusion that said sneaker company is the king or not, but that there's so much more space and creative space out there. And that kind of ties into who Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is, a guy that wears Converse, a guy that has a partnership with Skims, a guy that which is unorthodox. Of course, Kardashian wear in the NBA did a partnership there, and Shai has always been forward thinking and fashion conscious and as well. So I think he's different. I think he has a flair, and I think I don't think I know. The other guys on that team have shared with me. Not only is he their point guard, he's their style coordinator, swag coach. He knows his value, and the cool thing about Oklahoma, having been around that team for the last couple of years, visiting Oklahoma, spending time with that team, they're locked in. They share fashion advice, and you kind of see those levels of interactions mirror itself in post game interviews and just the way that those guys are cool on the court as well as off the court.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's crazy you bring up the James Harden sneakers on Jalen Williams. I have this theory that he's kind of the new James Harden on OKC in that he's kind of the Harden to SGA's Westbrook in that kind of way. And in that I think he's just as important for them to make a legitimate run. I think he's that good. And I think he's so good and is going to continue to be so good that they might run into the same situation where hopefully they pay him and keep him and don't let him walk in free agency like Harden did to Houston. But I almost see like the same thing starting to play out because when I see Jalen Williams running that thing at the point of attack, running pick and rolls, heady, strong, able to score in the paint, outside the paint. He's the real deal. And the two of them should stick together as long as they can.
Yeah, Sam Presti's got a good problem on his hands. I think that the Russell Westbrook and James Harden and Kevin Durant pairing, building from the draft. Um, he's had on the job experience dealing with that going from Seattle to Oklahoma, and building homegrown talent. If I can make a baseball reference, it reminds me somewhat of not just Oklahoma in the NBA, but also the New York Yankees in the early to mid 90s, where you had the homegrown talent of Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, and Paul O'Neill and some of those guys that just were homegrown, brought in through double A, triple A, minor league baseball, and then ultimately making World Series appearances representing the New York Yankees and building that dynasty. Ultimately, going outside of the realm of homegrown and bringing in the Alex Rodriguez's or bringing in the Gary Sheffields or bringing in the Cecil Fielders and more. Oklahoma's in a similar situation where they have the homegrown talent of not just Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, but also Lou Dort. And also, Dort has shared with me throughout the course of the last couple of seasons how much both he and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander playing for Team Canada, of course, Dort being from Montreal and say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander being from Toronto, how much of that chemistry, that built-in chemistry of playing for the same national team, helped prior to the season, did the Olympics, and then coming back and paying dividends going into this season. But I think when you look at the Oklahoma City going with that Yankees theme and going elsewhere outside of the homegrown talent, that's where you bring in via trade the Alex Caruso's, the Isaiah Hartensteins, and more. I think Oklahoma is on an upward trajectory where they did not need a big market in order to be successful. But as I say that about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that he was brought in earlier in his career via trade with the Los Angeles Clippers, originally drafted by the Clippers in the Paul George trade. That trade seemingly looking like it benefited the Oklahoma City Thunder, and getting SGA there and sending Paul George to the Clippers, where ultimately they paired him with Kawhi Leonard. But on the Oklahoma side, I do think that they've been battle tested. I think really going against the eventual Western Conference champions that were the Dallas Mavericks gave them a on-the-job training on how to compete. And I think the Western Conference is still pretty competitive, particularly with the Lakers retooling, LeBron James dealing with groin injuries, but ramping up his progress and coming back. That injury a little different than what happened in 2019. But I do think that the Lakers are one of those teams, as well as the Golden State Warriors, West, and even the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are finding their groove at this point in the second half of the season. That will compete heartily with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs.
Who does SGA's game remind you of?
A couple of different people. I've asked different people their thoughts on it, and I've reflected on that, and also come up with my own concoction of inspirations. I think there's definitely the zigzagging dribbling that is Allen Iverson, a taller Jamal Crawford, um, height of a point guard like Penny Hardaway, the court vision, being able to see above the floor.
Hmm.
I think there's a flair for the fashion that's somewhere between Walt Clyde Frazier, Allen Iverson, um, and himself. And I also think that he's himself because he's Toronto uh, born, and I think that there are some, even though he doesn't play like him, there are some Vince Carter influences of just watching him being a star in a city that's also part of a country in Toronto, Canada. But I think he is. I think he is a mixture of different people.
Yeah, I would agree. I think part of why he is so unique right now, and I love players like this, where you can just tell guys just can't figure him out. Like you see guys out there trying to guard him, they can't tell if he's going slow, if he's going fast, if he's going low, if he's going high. Now he's getting the foul bait conversation. That's where I think he's got a little Harden in him too. I think a lot of players in this era have picked up from what James Harden was doing, especially in those years in Houston. I feel like he revolutionized the step back, the side step. And you see so many more players adding that to their footwork. And I see some of that with him as well.
One thing that I find in talking to NBA level players, college level players, and high school level players is how much Paul George has influenced this.
Well, they think they think he is the best thing walking. They love them some Paul George now.
Yeah, and I really began to see that. Of course, that viral moment with Brandon Miller a couple of years ago, where I asked him, about the GOAT conversation in a different way, more so along the lines of just being around Michael Jordan when he was going through his draft process, and then, talking about LeBron James, and then talking about Paul George, and him saying Paul George was his GOAT, not that he was the GOAT, but that was his GOAT. And then I started really asking high school players that, and college players, and they say to me, or they relay to me, that imagine Kyrie at that height, he'd be the same person. And that was interesting to 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 think about, specifically because you and I, coming from a small Division III school, you, for example, had a point guard on your team that was a defensive stopper that was about 5'10", and I often heard people say, imagine if that particular point guard was 6'2", 6'3", defensive minded. Uh, he probably would be D3. And that's when I really started hearing those kind of conversations and kind of transferred it over to the pro game and how people view Paul George's influence, Kyrie Irving's influence, and how Steph Curry and LeBron James are definitely the model citizens of the game, but kind of counterculturally where they fit in. And Paul George's name is a name that I hear a lot.
Yeah, and I've said about Paul George, and it's very simple in basketball terms. Like I think just nowadays with the diversity of talent, the range of talent that young hoopers and fans have a chance to watch and study nowadays, it's so broad. Like there's so many dudes that are just flat out nice. And a lot of the young players coming up aren't caring as much about ring culture and legacy and all. They just want to know, do you get 30 and do you look good doing it? That's where aesthetic matters. And me as somebody who um I'm a Kobe Mike guy. And, if the Lord blesses me to have children one day, and if they are interested in basketball, we will start with Kobe and Mike. However, they will know about Paul George, James Harden, Allen Iverson. Like we will run through the gamut of just talent for you to look at. And like we're talking about Shea, like pull from all these different guys, not just the ones who won, the guys who won championships. Like there's too much talent to not be able to appreciate even guys like Paul George and James Harden.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment quite a bit because Kobe Kobe had the advantage of watching Mike. Mike created his own style while also obviously being influenced by the Dr. J's of the world, Connie Hawkins, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and others. But I'd be remiss to mention that as much as, when you talk about showing tape to young kids or the next generation of Michael, Kobe, Allen Iverson, I'm still gonna go with that countercultural theme. I still think that guys like Jamal Mashburn are supremely underrated. I still think that what Jalen Rose did as a point forward, not just in high school, but on the Indiana Pacers and the Denver Nuggets, really should be dissected a lot. And I also think that when you look at guys like Bob McAdoo, as
Mm.
well as Lamar Odom, before there was Lamar Odom, there was a Bob McAdoo. And I also think that when you look at point guards, as much as we talk about Steph Curry, we talk about Magic Johnson, I really think guys like Terrell Brandon should be dissected in the
Mm.
hands of basketball. And the fact that a lot of his competitors, admired his tenacity on the court. I think guys like Sam Cassell are playing the mid range, but also just being a court.
You know who was one of my guys? You appreciate this. Antoine Walker.
Always,
Twan.
always, always.
Cold. Shimmy. Come on now. Come on now. Shimmy.
But here's the thing. I feel like in the era of basketball where, within the last 10 to 15 years, we talk about guys like Anthony Bennett. You still have to pay homage to not just Antoine Walker, but Corliss Williamson,
Mm.
Larry Johnson, both at UNLV and during his time with the Hornets, which I think gets overlooked by his time with the Knicks. But I also think Clarence Weatherspoon uh,
Mm.
is another guy. Also, just that those descendants, if you will, of Charles Barkley. And I think Zion Williamson, as much as we talk about his weight and we talk about his ability, I think it's lazy to just compare him to, a Charles Barkley. I think that there's a level of his game that mirrors not only Sean Kemp, but also Zach LaVine, just his ability to get to the basket.
Mm.
Uh, but I also think that we have to be careful with um, putting players' skill sets in boxes because we live in a positionless basketball era now. Um, like I think when we look at Luka, it was easy to compare him to Tony Kukoc or Detlef Schrempf. But I've always seen different variants of LeBron as well as James Harden as well as the bit of Kukoc. But I think that's just because he's European and he's white. And the same with Zion because he has a little weight to him. It's easy to say Charles Barkley without fully dissecting his game. And I'm being respectful to those guys in the way that I say that. But I do think that we just live in an era of basketball where there are so many slashes to people's games.